folks, this is Matthew Lee here, hollering at you from Nashville, Tennessee. I'm going to show you some cool licks and tricks that I've learned throughout the years that I've incorporated into my playing style. I've used them on session work, live playing, recordings, you name it. Stuff that I've just used to help me capture my own voice, and different combinations of things that I actually really like and things that you should know in order to create your own voice, which I think is the most important thing. You know, you can cherry pick all that you want from other people, but just as long as you kind of like have your own individual identity. So that being said, what you're hearing on this guitar right now these are my faves right here. This is 10 to 46 D'Addario XLs. I use them on a lot of my tellies. Sometimes I like to get a little bit frisky and I use the New York or the NY XL 10 to 46 once again. And for all my acoustic instruments, I really like the XSs, and that's going to be a set of 12 to 53. That's just my own personal preference. So I like them a little bit thicker, at least on the telly, 10 to 46. And so let's get started with a couple things that are kind of basic things, but I think that need to be addressed. Is that as telly players or country players, we do something a little bit different with my right hand or your right hand. I was classically trained, so I have kind of a little bit of independence. But what you're going to want out of your playing style is to not just pick every note. As you can see, there's a lot of movement going on between this digit and this digit. So let's just talk about how to kind of approach that and use that to your advantage so you can really get that country sound. So it's going to be pick, middle, and ring. So a great way to kind of like think about that is that if you're playing an E chord, a lot of these examples are going to be in E. I'll show you how to do a couple other things, but let's just primarily stay in E. So we've got this E chord right here. So if you notice, that's three different things: pick, middle, and ring. So you've got, if you were to break the right hand down and do almost triplets or just groupings of three, you've got 6 strings. So you've got 1 grouping, 2, 3, 4 different segments, if you want to think about it that way, of what the right hand should be in control of. Wherever I'm at on the fretboard or whatever this hand is doing, I always think if I'm on the G string, I've got the B and the E are sometimes going to need to be covered by that right hand in the middle and the ring finger. So you heard that in that kind of banjo. Now there's going to be a little bit more of a roll there, but I think it needs to be definitely addressed. It's really going to help you out in your rhythm playing as well. And to get that percussive effect, that's what's happening, is that right hand is kind of, it's like a gas brake is what's going on there as far as what, to get that sound, to get that percussive, snappy type of sound. And then I'm doing other things, obviously, on the left hand as well. But I think that's kind of a great little basic thing, because I think rhythm and what happens in the right hand maybe doesn't get addressed enough by some students that I wind up seeing, and it will come back and bite you. So just make sure that you're pretty solid on that as we move forward. Let's take that kind of banjo roll thing that I just did, and let's break that down a little bit. So all I'm doing right here is I'm thinking in this. If you think up the neck and down the neck, and keep in mind we're thinking of the chord E7, I might approach it in thirds like this on the G and the B string. Now we're using some chromaticism, but that's okay. And I'm picking on the G string with my pick, and then I'm using my middle finger on the B string. If there was a third string on the E string that I'm going to be using, I would be using my ring finger. So that type of vibe. That type of vibe. So as far as the banjo roll goes, what you're going to wind up doing is hammering on. And so you're going to be playing the E and then the B string with your ring in your middle. This is a great way of kind of understanding that right hand independence that you need. That type of vibe. So what we've got going on is we're hammering on. Now we're going to be doing the same thing here on between the 6th and the 7th fret, and our pinky is going to grab the 9th fret on the B string. So we're outlining that E chord once again. It's a great way of being able to understand the fretboard and not just play in one area. So anytime you work on stuff, have it mapped out throughout the fretboard. It will really help you out in getting around the neck and also your transitions, assuming that there's going to be some other chord that you're going to. And what I did up here was just, or you could add the index finger here. It's a way of just kind of like simulating kind of what a banjo might wind up doing. Let's take something else that is going to allow you to play your double stops nice and crispy and very percussive, as I mentioned before. And I might do something like this. Now this is utilizing a pedal tone idea. What is pedal tone? Well, pedal tone is going to be something where you're hitting one note and then other notes are going to be floating around it. For example, you heard this in the intro. So I've got my pinky down here on the 9th fret of the G string. So once again, we're still thinking E, and we're just doing a nice little bluesy walk down. I really like using flat 5s, flat 3s, and flat 7s. No different than blue notes. Think of those as blue notes, but you're also using them with major thirds and all the other notes that you might normally wind up using. I think that really helps out in flavoring chords differently. Sliding in, and I think I ended it with a bend or something like that. I might do that because ending on the root all the time can get a little bit, you know, it's meat and potatoes, but it can get a little bit sonically or harmonically a little bit boring. So, or I might end in a double stop, and then I might work my way down. Another way to incorporate that flat 5 would be something like this. You heard this in the intro as well. So you're just doing this, and you're going to be using your middle finger on the D string, and you're working your way down once again. Pinky grabs this. And that's also a back rake. I like using those as well. Now, sometimes it requires both fingers to get that percussive effect, so it just kind of depends on where you are string-wise and what notes you want to incorporate. So that I might use my right hand as well, or a pick and middle. It just depends on what type of tone you want. Okay, so that's a technique that I utilize all the time, and tons of country players wind up doing that. So just have that right hand independence. In the beginning, I kicked off a little lick with like a pedal steel thing. I love trying to emulate pedal steel. I get asked about it a lot, so let's get into that. When you're approaching it like a pedal steel player, they have levers and their knees can control different pitches and be able to bend notes. We don't necessarily have that. We have our fingers. So to try to emulate that, you want to get the phrasing down. So imagine this. Think of the E major scale. So something like that. And I might approach it like this. Now you're bending notes, and keep in mind, there's half steps and then there's whole steps. The first one is a pre-bend, and then you release it. And if you're working your way down, I might go. There's all sorts of different ideas that you can wind up doing. Think in half steps and whole steps, and then make sure that your phrase fits depending on what feel that you're doing. I like doing it because it kind of slows down my playing, and what I mean by that is I think more melodically. So, and then here's another one: is a pedal steel player. I'm sure if you've been playing for a while, you know. So you got. something like that. Or so what I did there is I'm thinking in this kind of pentatonic box, or Aeolian. And then I'm grabbing this note instead of this note here. So I'm thinking more along the lines, I'm adding that C sharp, which adds some cool character. So that's a great way of mimicking pedal steel. I love that about the Tele, and just once I found it, I just can't stop doing it. I absolutely love it. So another way that you might wind up being able to do a B-bender lick or a steel type sounding lick and incorporating the flat 7 might be this. Once again, we're still thinking in E. So something like that. So what we're winding up doing is we're now assimilating what a B bender might do. A great way of understanding how to bend on the B string might be something like this. So we're thinking in E, so we're bending from the 7th fret, all using our ring finger with fingers behind it. And then to make it more interesting, I might put a country cluck in there, which would be. Now, that's going to be some of the syntax that you wind up having to play as a country player. Now, keep in mind, this is just over the E chord. There's a ton of ideas right there, and I kind of just used it from the intro that I wound up having. So go to school on it, shed some of those ideas. They're all over the neck. That's just some of the steel stuff that we wound up doing was thinking in the major scale and then just going up the neck. Getting to know that neck recognition is super important in winding up, understanding what you're doing over the chord, not just playing in a box, moving your way up the neck and transitioning to another chord. Speaking of transitioning, this last thing that I'll leave you with is I like to think of maybe a single note line where I'm playing chord changes over something like this. If I'm playing just over an E chord to make it a little bit more interesting. So I'm thinking 1, sharp 1, 2 minor, going back into the E. Excuse me, there was a 5 chord in there as well. So now another thing that you can wind up doing is approaching things from a half step below or a half step above, which is what I did to end that. So my single note line might have a skeleton of this. Do it again. Now you're into the A chord. Sharp 1 again. Ending on the 4 chord. Or if you needed to get down, there's a multitude of different ways, but the most important concept is to understand 1, sharp 1 chord, which is a diminished chord, by the way, you're raising. And there you go. So there's a bunch of different ideas right there. It's just a snapshot of what you can wind up doing as a country player, but I figured those are some of the things that I get asked about, so I figured I'd give some examples. Hopefully that helped you out, and I hope to see you soon. Take care.